guys, I'm Ben, and today I'm going to give you my top 20 favorite releases of 2022. I had a strange relationship with new music this year. I was writing a lot of album reviews for Sea of Tranquility and therefore consuming a large amount of music that I normally wouldn't. Simultaneously, I was, as always, diving back in time, and my main focus was primarily on albums from the past. This year, I was on a particularly strong classic thrash metal kick for a good chunk of the year, exploring many older bands I'd sort of previously only had a cursory knowledge of or no knowledge at all. This also led me to explore once again the dark realms of death metal as well, also from the past primarily, and I'm still very much on the path as the year wraps up. That isn't to say, though, that I found nothing to love from this year's crop of albums, because in actual fact, this was a pretty solid year for top-tier releases, as you'll see throughout the list. I've noticed some of these albums mentioned in other metal lists, but I've also got a few, up the top of mind that no one seems to be talking about, so there might be a few surprises in there for you all too. Anyway, let's dive right in. First, I will mention some of the peripheral stuff like EPs and remixes, because there was a few amazing ones in both categories that would rank very highly on the list. However, they aren't albums or new albums in the case of remixes, so there you go. For EPs, there was the fabulously explosive EP called Blue Nothing by the band Worm. Featuring the mind-bending guitar mastery of Phil Tugar, this is basically dreamy death doom, which is slow and epic and fantastic in its own right, but it's absolutely lifted to transcendent heights with Phil's remarkable lead breaks and soloing. If you haven't heard it, then definitely go check it out. Just check out the surreal power of the opening title track, Blue Nothing, to see what I'm talking about. It's explosive, expansive, beautiful, dark, and epic. Another killer little EP was Fisting the Sockets. Funny title there, by death metal veterans Severe Torture. So you can guess by the name of the EP and the name of the band that it's pretty pulverizing, and they're sounding as pulverizing as ever with their brand of brutal death metal that occasionally borders on tech death, but never at the price of abandoning the classic death metal brutality they are known for. On this EP, they do introduce a few moments of melody that help to juxtapose the heaviness, but it's certainly only a minor addition, because Fisting the Sockets is still, severe torture, assaulting the senses without mercy, and I fucking love it. Great band, and I believe this EP is actually just a taste of an album that is currently in the works, so I'm definitely excited for that too. And finally, the last EP I want to mention is from the Bay Area legends Vio-Lence with Let the World Burn. The only issue I had with this recording is that it's only an EP. If this was a full album, it would have been high on the list. Vio-Lence have always been one of the best thrash bands from that fertile scene, and having them back and sounding this killer is absolutely awesome. I just hope we get a full length from them soon too, you know, but if you like your thrash, no frills, just fast and mean, then look no further. They aren't reinventing the wheel here, but they don't need to. It fucking rules nonetheless. Okay, so now I'll mention a few remixes that really grabbed me. First one is a remix and instrumental version of the original, and that is by the band Melechesh with Epigenesis, the instrumentals. I love the original album, so it was interesting to hear some 10 years after the original version was released, this instrumental version. Of course, the original is a classic and one of my favorites from the band, but it was cool to hear many of the intricate layers that had remained somewhat hidden be brought into the light and have a more central role when it's in an instrumental form. I'm always going to prefer the original with the vocals, because they fucking rule, but this was definitely worth checking out too, and I would recommend it, especially if you're a fan of the band. It's worth hearing anyway. Next, we have the excellent 2018 remix of the Pink Floyd masterpiece, Animals. I made a full review of that for the channel, so you can watch that for my full thoughts, but, you know, spoiler alert, I loved it. And I think it breathed new life into this remarkable classic, which I've listened to countless times from one of my all-time favorite bands. Awesome stuff. And the last remix I have to mention is from another all-time favorite band, and it just so happens to be my favorite album from them too, and that is The Beatles with Revolver, the Super Deluxe Edition. Revolver is such a remarkable album that still has, you know, the feel of the old nightclub rocking Beatles, but also is the real beginning of their creative innovations, their experimentations and explorations, and into different, you know, songwriting styles and recording techniques. This crossroads of their old and new sounds was perfectly blended to my ears on Revolver. And while I love the original mono mix, which does sound perhaps a touch heavier overall because the songs are sort of more stacked, like on She Said, and Your Bird Can Sing come to mind as sounding a little heavier on the mono. Here on this new stereo mix, the Beatles, with the help of Giles Martin, you know, and his mixing expertise, have finally created a stereo mix that does the material justice, and it sounds absolutely glorious. If this wasn't a remix of an old album, it would be at the top of my list. I adore most of the Beatles albums, but Revolver just does it for me the most, and I love it. Okay, so now let's get into the top 20 albums of the year. Also, I want to say that apart from the few at the very top, this list really isn't a very strict order, so don't put too much emphasis on that. You know, these are just really a list of killer albums that I love and that deserve attention, in my opinion anyway. So, number 20 is Fallujah with Empyrean. Fallujah are one of the mainstays of the technical death metal scene and have been one of its leaders for a long time now, with classic albums like Harvest Wombs, The Flesh Prevails, and Dreamless. The band have created a sound that is fluid, extreme, and epic, combining top-tier playing with a dreamlike aesthetic to create powerful and memorable compositions. The band seemed to stumble somewhat with their previous album, Undying Light, at least in the eyes of many of the fans. However, on Empyrean, they have returned to form with a vengeance. And while I need to spend some more time with this album to see if it will impact me as much as The Flesh Prevails or Dreamless, I think overall Empyrean sees the band reaching even deeper into the well of technicality while not foregoing any of their trademark dreaminess that is so crucial to their sound. If you like your metal extreme and technical but also very musical, then don't sleep on this bad boy. Next, we have at 19, Surreption with Jord, I guess. It's spelled Jord, so Jord or Jord. Jord, I believe, is the band's 4th album or thereabouts, I think. Surreption has to be one of the grooviest tech death bands in the game, blending extremely cool and tasty riffing with endless amounts of groove, which just leaves the listener with no choice but to move their body. The playing is top tier from every member. Gurgling bass lines, insane drumming of the coolest, extreme, and riffs for days make Jord a totally badass and fun listen, so go check it out. It's awesome. At 18, we have Exocrine with The Hybrid Suns. Exocrine are a French technical death metal band that I've been following for a few years now, and they just seem to be getting better and better with each subsequent release. The Hybrid Suns is definitely continuing that trend too. Like with Fallujah, Exocrine blends extremely high levels of technical playing with an aptitude to write very musically compelling riffs and changes. However, unlike Fallujah, who leans more into the sort of dreamscape thing, Exocrine leans more into an epic grandeur vibe. And when I'm listening to this music, it just makes me feel like I'm witnessing some gigantic cosmic event or something like that. Very cool and impressive album from these guys, and a band to watch. Coming in at 17, we have Belphegor with The Devils. I made a full review of this album on the channel, so if you want to know my full thoughts on this one, go check out that video. But needless to say, I thought this album slayed, hence it being on this list. I'm new to this band too, but The Devils really grabbed me instantly, and I love the menacing evil and sinister vibe throughout this beast of an album. Epic and evil, and I fucking love it. In the 16th place, we have Amorphous with Halo. I've seen this one on several lists already, and I can understand why. In short, it's a fantastic album, the third and final part of the trilogy of albums, including Under the Red Cloud and Queen of Time. Halo is my favorite of the 3 albums. I think while those 2 albums have some great material, from my point of view, Halo has more of the standout songs. In previous years, this album may have ranked higher for me, but I've been less into the melodic end of death metal lately, as I mentioned above. However, the use of classic rock elements folk metal, and traditional native themes make Halo a truly enriching and rewarding listening experience. And it's really a fantastic album. So if you haven't heard it, go check it out. Next, at 15, we have Aeternum with Heir of the Rising Sun.
Fear the author, the scourge of Persefone. Our godly dagger is intended to conquer. From the shadows we rise, impostors of darkness. As I carry my divine mission.
As far as melodic/symphonic death metal goes, Aeternum can always be counted on to deliver memorable and epic sagas which conjure up images of sweeping desert vistas, cataclysmic battles, and ancient cities sprawling and full of life. Few bands in that end of the genre spectrum can hold my interest, but Aeternum have managed to captivate me on almost all their albums. Their previous work didn't really grab me, but I feel like they have really leveled up again here, and I'm back on the hype train for these guys. Excellent use of melody, Middle Eastern and Mediterranean musical elements, and pure aggression. The vocals combination of growls and cleans work perfectly here too. If you like it epic and cinematic with a strong concept, then don't sleep on this one. Absolutely killer. At 14, we have our first classic heavy metal entrant with Tony Martin and his album Thorns. So Tony Martin, of course, famous for being Black Sabbath's most overlooked vocalist, has always had a place in my heart. I always liked most of his Black Sabbath material and always felt he was unfairly maligned for many years. Thankfully, that has shifted in recent years with more people, especially younger generations of classic heavy metal fans, acknowledging what a powerhouse vocalist Tony really is. Thorns really caught me by surprise this year. I was expecting another sort of generic heavy metal album, and while yes, there are familiar tropes here, Thorns is ripe with ripping and powerful material. Tony, of course, shines on every track with his wonderfully rich and expressive voice, but the band is also on fire. The riffs rule, the bass playing is fantastic, and even has standout moments, including a slap bass solo that actually rules and works perfectly here, which seems crazy in this style of music. And the drumming is driving and great too. The only thing I don't like is the album cover. It doesn't do the music justice. But if you love classic heavy metal and want to hear it done with the expertise and experience, then look past the album cover and give Thorns some much deserved attention. You won't regret it. Coming into the 13th place, we have Voivod with Synchro Anarchy.
We'll build time frame for Synchro Anarchy. Insert a block in there where it's supposed to be.
Voivod are a band that are truly genre-defying and really always have been. A truly unique and original force in metal. Blending elements of thrash, progressive rock and metal, punk and avant-garde music, Voivod has always been able to subvert expectations without being annoying or pretentious about it. Of course, these veterans have once again provided us with an album full of their trademark quirkiness and explorations that are equal parts fun and disturbing, and it's oh so glorious. There's a demented energy, they like a mental patient on the loose in a stranger's house party or something, that really permeates the music, and I'm all about it. It's fucking awesome. So if you haven't heard it, go check it out. Next, at 12, we have Allegaeon with Damnum. I also did a video review of this album, so go check that out for a deeper dive. But in short, this is Allegaeon at their progressive and technical best, merging those elements with a very strong sense of melody and composition. Fantastic playing all around and great vocals from their outgoing vocalist. This is another one for the fans of progressive and technical death metal, so go check it out. Next, in the 11th place is Xentrix with 7 Words.
Another system released, a road controlled and policed. The latest message complete, with the next move all is pointless.
I also covered this album in a video review. I'll put links to all the reviews in the description so you can check it out in more depth. But in short, Xentrix are a legendary British thrash band that to my ears sounds most like classic Metallica, especially and Justice for All era stuff. But they do it so well and the songs kick so much ass that it doesn't feel like a copy. Killer, badass, pure thrash. Definitely go check it out. Now we arrive to the top 10, and in the 10th spot we have Septic with Nail to Ignorance.
This night breathe inside me. How can I make it disappear? It's all reminding me the pain I used to feel.
So Septic are a Polish technical death metal band that have been around for a long time now with various lineups along the way, and I was a big fan of their old album Pathetic Being, but I felt they kind of dropped off a bit over the years. So as you can imagine, I was very happy to hear how badass this new album was from these guys. Loaded with killer riffing, standout bass work, and pulverizing drumming, all with a sort of early tech death vibe, which is right up my alley. It's slick without sounding overdone, and even though it's not as boundary pushing as some of the other tech death on this list, I feel like it doesn't need to be. It's just well written and highly enjoyable metal, and I love it. Coming in at number 9 is An Abstract Illusion with Woe. These guys got my attention with their previous album, Illuminate the Path, but it's really here on the new album, Woe, that the band have reached a new creative zenith. The songs are rich with emotional power and progressive adventurousness, combining black and death metal with technicality and progression and a metric ton of melody to create an album that both impresses the mind but also pulls hard on the old heartstrings. There is also a dreamlike, expansive quality to the music that really takes you on a journey through a series of moods and emotions, all of them dark, but in their own unique way. I highly, highly recommend this one. At number 8, we have Sadist with Fire Scorched. So this one may seem a little high up on the list, but I've always had a soft spot for Sadists and their totally unique approach to metal, which combines sort of harsh, thrashy death metal with jazz fusion and tribal sounds. Their albums, Tribe, Season of Silence, and Hyena are all personal favorites. And even though their previous album, Spellbound, left a lot to be desired, here on Firescorched, the band has returned to form and in fact have delivered one of their strongest albums to date. Returning to their mix of the elements I mentioned before, as well as a strong progressive and technical tendencies. Firescorched is a wild ride of eccentricities and uniqueness. You have harsh vocal delivery, grooving drum attack, killer riffing, and percolating bass parts played by the bass maestro Jeroen Paul Thesseling from Pestilence and Obscura fame, and it just makes Firescorched an absolutely killer addition to the Sadist catalogue. Awesome stuff. Next, in the 7th spot, we have Bloodbath with Survival of the Sickest.
Nowhere to run, skinless fingers everywhere. Let's just rip on my back. Endless glory, death is near. In those eyes, the dead staring back at me. Horrid screams, die with slicing me and bites on me.
I made an in-depth review of this bad boy too, but as a huge Bloodbath fan, I was very happy to see that these guys had returned with an album that is right up there with their best material, packed with straight for the jugular, no frills death metal that is as much fun as it is memorable. Killer band with all 3 different vocalists, and once again they have delivered another killer album. Go check it out. Next, at number 6, we have Kreator with Hate Uber Alles. All of these next selections on the list I've made full review videos for. So for a more detailed analysis of the rest of the top 10 that I'm going to go through, including this one, check the description for those links. However, I will say that while this album and modern Kreator seems to divide the fan base between loving and hating their modern output, I fall in the former camp. I think especially the last few albums like Phantom Antichrist and Gods of Violence are killer epic thrash albums, and Hate Uber Alles sits very well in that company. Even though they may be repeating themselves somewhat stylistically, again, I say, so what? The songs are memorable and hitting hard, with great playing from everyone, with plenty of guitar fireworks to add the icing to the cake. I think this is a killer album and definitely one of the best thrash albums of the year. So now, at number 5, we have Immolation with Acts of God. So this album really fit in perfectly with the death metal kick I was on this year. As usual, when it comes to providing a blistering, no mercy death metal onslaught dripping with atmosphere and uniqueness, you can always count on Immolation to not disappoint, especially in recent years. Their previous album, Atonement, is regarded by many fans as their best. However, personally, I like Acts of God even more. I find the whole thing to be a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic foray into the underworld. or at least the world of anti-religious intensity anyway. The band sound as young and motivated and fresh as ever, with song after song sounding as engaging and exciting as ever. Also, I've got to say that artwork is one of the best of the year too. Absolutely love it. Immolation are well known for being one of the best and greatest death metal bands of all time, and this album only strengthens that belief in my opinion. Next, at number 4, we have Obsidious with Iconic. Again, see the links below for more detailed look at this album, but damn, this is a progressive death metal perfection. Featuring the guys from Diluvium era Obscura, minus of course Stefan Kumera, and with the addition of Juggernaut singer Javi Pereira, the musical pedigree was already strong with these guys. And on their first outing, free of the constraints of writing for Obscura, the guys have delivered an epic album of grand proportions that not only picks up where they left off with Diluvium, but expands and extends the horizons to encompass the whole cosmos. The mind-bending guitar lines, extremely awesome bass acrobatics, the intricate and uber-tasteful drumming, and the fantastic varied vocals of Harsh and Clean alone would make this an interesting album to listen to. But the compositional chops are there too, with every song filled with memorable hooks and epic power. They bring together death, progressive, technical, power, and several other subgenres of metal seamlessly to create one of the year's absolute best. Highly recommended to the progressive death fans out there. Okay, top 3. So these 3 were all vying for the top spot ever since they were released, but ultimately, I ended up ranking them with which ones brought me back the most. So with that said, number 3 is Toxik with Dismortar. So again, my review is much more in-depth, but I also recommend my long interview with main man Josh Christian, who is a great guy. Very interesting story that he has to tell about his life in the band, and one of the best guitarists in thrash. I mean, the guy's a fucking monster, and while any fans of the old classic Toxik albums already knew that, he not only reminds us, but lifts the game to a crazy extent here on Dismortar. They've also brought in the new singer Ron Iglesias, who remains high in the stratosphere the entire time, making even Rob Halford's balls hurt. But it's absolutely killer. Beyond the extreme proficiency of the performing by all in the band, the material is great here as well. The album, which has a central theme exploring the nature of the world we're living in and subjected to, sifts through the powers that be and religious institutions and more that lead to sort of imprison our free will and much more. Watch the interview with Josh to get his full perspectives on that. It's really interesting. Anyway, this is easily my favorite thrash album of the year, and if you haven't heard it and love progressive, aggressive, yet also highly melodic and epic thrash, then go check out this fantastic album. Highly recommend it. Okay, next at number 2, we have the mighty Persefone with Metanoia. This album absolutely blew me away when I first reviewed it, and I believe from memory I gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. Now, I might have slightly overdone it, but not by much. Persefone are an amazing band from Andorra who have been producing exponentially better albums throughout their fairly long career. Their previous album, Atma, was my favorite album of that year, and with albums like Spiritual Migration, Shinken, and Truth Inside the Shades, I was fairly confident that Metanoia would be great. And I was not only relieved to find out I was right, but also that they had exceeded my expectations. Metanoia sees the band perfecting their trademark progressive death metal, refining all the elements of angular, complex riffing and drumming, and soaring vocal passages and fierce growls, all portraying a wholly positive message. Unlike some prog, which can feel a bit like a music school project or assignment, Persefone are all about the art of their music and its oozing passion and emotion. And in the hands of a band performing at this level, then it's a recipe for perfection. This was so close to being my number one, and I essentially love it as much. But as I said before, I just listened to the top pick more. Anyway, this is a masterful work of art, and I most highly recommend it. Go check it out. Okay, so here we are. My number one, the top spot of 2022, goes to, and I know this will be a controversial one, but Decapitated with Cancer Culture. So again, I go deeper in my review, but Decapitated has been a favorite of mine since the VTech days. Those first four albums, Winds of Change, Nihility, The Negation, and Organic Hallucinosis, are some of the best tech death ever recorded, and I adore those albums. Of course, the band has been plagued with horrible luck over the years, with death and crippling, bus crashes, plane crashes, false accusations of rape and imprisonment, and being all, and that's all part of their story and more. The band would reconstitute after VTech's passing some years later with all new players except main songwriter and lead guitarist Vogue. And to be honest, the new run of albums never really grabbed me, causing me to sort of drop off almost completely in recent years. However, that has shifted in a major way with this album. Cancer Culture, which to some degree catalogues and confronts the band's many painful, frustrations surrounding the rape accusations and imprisonment and the way everyone turned against them. I've seen smug reviewers on YouTube criticize the band for using the title Cancer Culture. Oh, it's so cringe, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, if anyone can rightfully complain about that and explore that topic, it's Decapitated, after all the shit that they've been through in the last couple of years. The music is absolutely explosive here too, tapping into the band's precision and brutal technical death metal assault, but also throwing a few curveballs in the form of guest vocal appearances from people like Tatiana from Ginger and Rob Flynn from Machine Head, who both do a fantastic job adding some unexpected but very welcome clean vocal melodies to songs like Hallow Death and Iconoclast respectively. They both absolutely nail it too. Tatiana sounds her absolute best, and even though I'm not a big Ginger fan, I do appreciate her talents, and she fully displays her clean vocal talents here. Rob's performance is slightly more understated, but equally effective, and adds an epicness to the song that, again, is Surprising on a Decapitated album, but works beautifully and I fucking love it. I know there are albums out there that may be more cutting edge, hell, even on this list. However, that's really not the criteria for me for this list. I'm more interested in how the music directly connects with me and if it draws me back to it. No other new album did that for me this year. And while it seems that on every list I've seen so far, cancel culture is nowhere to be seen, for me, it's an absolute must-have. An amazing album, and I love every second of this pulverizing hard hitter. If you love their organic hallucinosis era stuff and don't mind just a sprinkle of melody thrown into the mix, sparingly, don't worry, it's still fucking crushing death metal, technical death metal, then don't sleep on this absolute beast of an album. Awesome, fucking awesome, and I fucking love this album. And it's so good that it might even rank up there as one of my favorite Decapitated albums now. So we'll see. I'll look back on this video in a few months' time and see if I want to punch myself in the face for saying that. But at this stage, I just fucking love it. I love every second of it. Anyway, guys, that wraps up the list for this year. It's been another crazy year for me, but overall, I think a decidedly better one than last year. I'm working hard to try and rebuild my life bit by bit, and this journey of creating the channel with you guys has been extremely rewarding and fun. I just hit 200 subs, which I know in YouTube land is tiny, but for me that's a cool little landmark. So thanks guys for that, and I hope you all have a killer new year with fucking great music and great metal and family and friends and all of that good stuff. Anyway guys, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, stay metal, and see you next time.